Hello, everyone. In English again, I want to welcome you in this session to speak about the oppressed nation in Asia and the region. First, I want to welcome Mr. Mako Qoçgirî. A little introduction. He's a political expert, the political scientist, has been working for Sivaka Azad, the Kurdish Center for Public Relations based in Berlin. The Free Society Center has set itself the task of providing information about what is happening in Kurdistan and thus making a contribution to containing the war and paving the way for a peaceful solution. I want to welcome you on this stage. Already shared that it's really important to know why this conflict exists in Pakistan. The nation question is really important, that all the nations in Pakistan are asking this question to the government, to the oppressor, that we are not here to be silent, we're not here to be killed, we're not here to be murdered. So we need our own human rights. All of the people that are being oppressed in Pakistan need their rights. That's why this question exists, and that's why we are here to discuss it. I also really want to all of you to thank you, and just to discussion, I want to ask Mr. Mako Qoçgirî to share his awareness and also bring light to the problems of Kurds and what we actually need to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, I want to apologize for my English. I mean, I haven't been speaking English for a while, and especially like a political issue. I'm not sure if I can manage it in a proper way, but I will try my best. Thanks for the invitation. It is really an honor to have you here as the Kurdish community. So you might know, like, the Kurdish freedom movement is an internationalist movement as well. Like, we're not struggling only for our rights, but we see as a duty to bring struggles together, to learn from each other, to share our experiences in the fight against oppression. So it's for us a big honor to have you here and to host this conference as well. As it has been said, my name is Mako Qoçgirî. I'm working for Sivaka Azad. This our place is like a center for public relations for the Kurdish movement, and we started our work around 10 years ago to inform the German society, to raise awareness about the Kurdish issue. Like, in Germany, there are living around 1 million Kurds, and overall there are living about 45 million Kurdish people. Kurdistan is like, for 100 years right now, since the end of World War I, divided into 4 countries. So we have Kurds living in Turkey, we have Kurds living in Iraq and Syria and in Iran. And in almost of these 4 countries, the Kurdish people are being oppressed, or have been oppressed in the history. Like, I can give an example from my own family, just to get a picture how this oppression works in Turkish Kurdistan, for instance. Like, the biggest part of Kurdistan is northern Kurdistan, as we call it. It's like the Kurdish areas which are under the occupation of the Turkish state, and around 20 to 25 million Kurdish people are living in Turkey, and they don't have their elementary basic rights. So, for instance, like, when my father grew up in his village, he told me, like, a story which might be all of Kurdish families tell to their children, because in the village everybody was speaking Kurdish. It was a Kurdish village. Then they came to the age when they have to go to elementary school, and the teacher in the elementary school was like some person who doesn't know any word of Kurdish, but is from the west part of Turkey. And the duty of this teacher was to make these Kurdish children, to educate them to Turks, to Turkey, to impose the Turkish identity on them. So the first thing what the teacher did to my father, and not only to my father, was to tell his students, you're not allowed to speak your language anymore. And they had to learn Turkish in school. And if they spoke Kurdish, they have been beaten up. Like, that was how the assimilation politics worked. I can also give the example of my mother. Like, my mother went with her family in a small age because of economical reasons to Ankara, to the capital of Turkey, and her parents, they were like frightened to teach their children Kurdish because they knew like when the neighborhood knows we are a Kurdish family, we will get problems. So officially in the ideology of the Turkish state, there were no Kurds living in Turkey. Like everyone has to be there were no Kurds living in Turkey. Like everyone has to accept the Turkish identity. And so my mother didn't learn any word of Kurdish, even if she was like from Kurdish origin. Her parents talked Kurdish to each other, but with their children, they only talk Turkish. And today, like I was born in Germany, and I was raised with the Turkish language, and that is like the consequence of this assimilation politics, which worked out in Turkey. Yes, there was a situation for many years in Turkey, but there was always also kind of struggle for the Kurdish rights, for Kurdish, for the freedom of the Kurdish people. And a long time the Kurds weren't able to organize themselves, but after the students' revolts in the 1968s, there came up Turkish socialist movements which were talking also about the Kurdish issue. And that was something new, because till then, since the founding of the Turkish state, like nobody dared to speak about the Kurdish issue. But there, at this time, like socialist movements, they were talking also about the Kurdish issue, saying like, when we do the socialist revolution in Turkey, then we will also give the Kurds their rights. And it was something new. And from the students' movements, like also the Kurdistan Workers Party, the PKK, emerged. And this movement was, as I said, like from the beginning, it was an internationalist movement. Like the founder of this organization was Mr. Abdullah Öcalan, and the first two persons who he had organized were not from Kurdish origin, they were Turks. They were socialist Turks, but they saw it as their duty, like as socialists, as internationalists, to fight for the rights of their Kurdish brothers and sisters. And this was like the origin of the movement, the foundation, like the first organization of people who participated in the PKK were at the universities in Turkey. Later on, they moved to Kurdistan, and they organized like their struggle. In 1978, the PKK was founded. In 1980, there was a military coup in Turkey, and this military coup was like a breaking point for the socialist movements, because it was the time when all the socialist movements couldn't exist anymore, because all of their leaders had been imprisoned or exiled. What the PKK did is that before the coup, they went to Syria and started to prepare for the armed struggle. And the armed struggle was like organized in Palestinian camps. Like there, they didn't learn how to do a guerrilla warfare. The Palestinian organizations had the PKK to organize the struggle. And in 1984, they started like the war for self-independence in Kurdistan. It was an armed struggle that started in 1984, and it continues until today. And the war in northern Kurdistan and Turkish part was like really brutal throughout the 90s, especially. There have been 4,000 Kurdish villages being destroyed from the Turkish state. Thousands of people have died within the guerrilla or on the side of the Turkish army, but also a lot of civilians suffered real damages through this war. Like they are talking about 17,000 people who were like political activists. They didn't participate in the war, but they vanished. Like they were being murdered on the streets in the 1990s from so-called unknown perpetrators. Like everybody knew it was kind of paramilitary from the Turkish state, but nobody got convicted for these murders. And then until now, like the families of those people who have vanished in the 1990s, they're like demonstrating to get the corpse of their children. So that's a fight that still continues today. And yeah, as I said, like the PKK started the fight for an independent Kurdish socialist state, but with the 1990s, there was kind of change within the PKK. Like the PKK in 1993, there was one period when the Turkish state was like one part in the Turkish state was thinking about the political solution of the Kurdish question, because they also saw like economically and politically this war leads to nowhere. So at some point we have to do a discussion and find a political solution for our question. And the PKK, and especially Abdullah Öcalan, also got convinced like there need to be somehow a political solution. So from the 1990s, they started like negotiations, which were really a short period, because the Turkish president who advocated for this peace process, he suddenly died. Like in the state, there was one part who was in favor for this political solution, and there was another part which was against it. They wanted to continue the war, and this president died because of a heart attack. That's the official version, but many people don't believe that. They say like some parts, the deep Turkish state has killed him. That's also being told from the family members of this Turkish president. Then, like 1998, Abdullah Öcalan got exiled from Syria because of the political pressure of Turkey. Since until then he was working for the PKK in Syria, and in 1998 he got exiled. He went to Europe to enforce somehow a political solution. So he wanted the support of European states like Greece and later on Italy to support somehow a political process for the solution of the Kurdish question. And he also got signals from the European states that they are like willing to help to find a solution between the Turks and the Kurds. But at the end, it was kind of, the Kurds got somehow betrayed, and Abdullah Öcalan was handed out to the Turkish state as like, with the help of like international intelligence services from the US to Mossad and like the European powers. And since then, since 1999, Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, is imprisoned in Turkey. He's right now living a lifelong sentence in the Imrali prison, in a prison island in Turkey. But Öcalan used his time in prison to develop like theoretically and ideologically a new perspective for the solution of the Kurdish question. And he got the time to evaluate like the changes in world politics. I mean, the Cold War ended in the 1990s. Then he took a look also at the anti-colonial struggles worldwide, and he came to the conclusion that like after these anti-colonial struggles, like especially in Africa, but also in other parts of the world, after they succeeded, there was somehow a kind of disillusionment in this society. The people saw like, okay, we kicked out the colonialists, but the system which has been built up was kind of authoritarian. It was not a socialist system, and even the exploitation from the former colonialists somehow continued. And as a result of that, like the PKK came to the conclusion, and Abdullah Öcalan came to the conclusion that the problem of the Kurdish people is not going to be solved with an own nation state. Like the nation state is not the solution for the Kurdish question. So he detached the right of self-determination from statehood and developed a new perspective, which he is calling democratic confederalism. This one, like this system, this perspective is an anti-statist. Like it's anti-statist, like it's against the state system, but it's seen like a solution through autonomy in the Kurdish regions and through implementing democracy. And the implementation of the system is like right now working out in northern Syria, in the region we call Rojava. Since 2012, they are being built up like a system which is not based on our own Kurdish state, but rather on democracy, on grassroots democracy. And this is one political line in the Kurdish struggle to which we also feel really connected. There's also a second political line in Kurdistan, which has a center in southern Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, and they go for a whole different political approach. Like the Kurds in Iraq, they also have a really bloody history, like they're being murdered and massacred under the Ba'ath regime, under Saddam Hussein especially. And Saddam Hussein was like, he wanted to find a final solution for the Kurdish question by genocide. In the 1980s, he, like in a campaign, he killed around 180,000 Kurds. Alone in the city of Halabja, at a short while of 1 or 2 days, he bombed this whole city with poison gas, and around 5,000 people died there. Like that was the approach from Saddam Hussein, and there was also a struggle, a resistance against Saddam and the Ba'ath regime in Iraq, and this resistance was led by the Kurdistan Democratic Party under the rule of Mustafa Barzani. And this party has a totally different approach to the PKK. Like they are also struggling for autonomy of the Kurds, but they somehow uncoupled the social question in Kurdistan from the national question. Like they're fighting for autonomy, but they themselves, they're like a conservative party. They don't want to change like the society into a democratic way, but they want to get their own power. And somehow they doing the same way like the PKK criticized their anti-colonial movements in their history. They are repeating it. The KDP is repeating it. And since the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003, there was this Kurdish autonomy established in northern Iraq, in South Kurdistan, but the rule there, like the KDP is ruling this autonomy, but they've installed somehow an authoritarian system where there is, for instance, no press freedom, and it is based on nepotism. Like the Barzani clan, the Barzani family is ruling everything, and that's like a point which we don't accept, like as sympathizers of the Kurdish freedom movement of the PKK, we don't accept this kind of system. We are in opposition to that. And like the KDP is today also politically and economically heavily dependent on Turkey. So all their like economical support is coming from Turkey, and this is somehow contradictory because like the Turkish state is oppressing the Kurds in Turkey, is attacking the Kurds in Syria and Rojava today, but economically they support the KDP, and the KDP needs this support. So the Turkey is favoring the Kurdish system, which is under their rule, under their control. And today the KDP is, for instance, also supporting the Turkish war against the PKK. So Kurds are fighting against Kurds because they are like economically dependent on Turkey. And our political line, and that's what I try to underline, is fundamentally different from this political project in South Kurdistan. Our principles are based like on grassroots democracy, on the equality of women. The struggle of women's rights is a basic pillar for the PKK, and also like the freedom of all religious communities and peoples in the region. And as I said, like in Rojava, this kind of social system is now being implemented. Is the social system, the system in Rojava is based on these principles. And yeah, and a few words on Rojava, and then I will end my speech also. Like as you know, many of you might have heard of Kobani, like when the war against the Islamic State took place in 2014, 2015. And after like the liberation of Kobani, the self-defense forces of Rojava of northern Syria, they also liberated more and more Arab cities from the so-called Islamic State. And what happened in these cities where like the Islamic State, which were under the rule of the Islamic State, is they are mainly Arab cities, like there's an Arab majority there, but the system of Rojava tried to be like an umbrella also for them. So they could organize their own cities, they could be part of this democratic system in Syria and northern Syria, and they could build up like their own self-rule based on people's councils. And that is actually like the perspective of the Kurdish freedom movement. Like, we want to not only liberate the Kurdish regions and build up a grassroots democracy. Actually, our aim is like, we want to democratize the Middle East, because building up a Kurdish state right in the middle of authoritarian states won't be a long-lasting solution. So you will always be in war with your neighbors, and that won't be the solution. So our principle is like, we want to get in touch and organize ourselves with the people all over the region who fight for their rights, who fight for democracy, and build up kind of a democratic umbrella. And this is what we today do also in Turkey with the HDP. There's a political party which not only consists of Kurds but also other groups in Turkey. This is what we try in Syria as well with the Arab population, but also with other minorities. And of course, like the state powers like Turkey and other nation states, they see this project as a big threat. Also the KDP, the Democratic Party of Kurdistan, sees this as a big threat for their own power. But what we see in Rojava and throughout the region is that there is a need for democracy, and the people are like supporting this project. So we see Rojava especially as a hope for all people in the world who are convinced that another world is possible. So let us learn from each other, let us learn from our struggles. That is the basic point for all people who fight for their freedom. And we can really learn a lot from each other, from our struggles and solidarity. Like the big powers who are oppressing us, they are working all the time together. So we as the oppressed have to build up bridges to each other as well and strengthen our struggles. I would like to end my contribution with that. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm right here. Thank you very much.